Merry Christmas to you, crafty friends. I am going to share with you, this is not a tutorial, I just want to talk through this piece, and I will have step out photos on my blog of how to make the base for this and any details that are part of it. But this talk through I think might help you as far as maybe you struggle a little bit with making vignettes or figuring out what to put in them, and this might help a little bit. I absolutely love this. This might be one of my favorite Christmas vignettes that I have ever made. So this is my vignette based on A Christmas Carol, and as you can see from looking at from this viewpoint, it looks like this is a book, and then if I turn it sideways you can see it looks again like it's a book, but really if I turn it upside down you can see it is a small vignette tray. So I took step out photos when I did make this, and part of the inspiration was that there are some wonderful, they're actually book covers that are in the Backdrops Papers pack, and so I used that, and then on the edge I used some cracked leather that I had inked with mahogany and walnut stain, distress spray stain, and then I used a little bit of tarnished brass paint there, and then some crayon all around it. The edges, if you look like a book because I put just little thin strips of chipboard along there, and then, and excuse my fingers, you can tell I've been inking still. So this is chipboard, and then I wrapped the paper around and adhered it to the chipboard. And then this is another strip, and then just a little strip of paper that went around that to make it look like the edge of the book binder, the book cover. And then to make the wood look a little bit like paper, I have this old Tim Holtz scratchy tool, and for scratching photos and things like that. Here, I found it. And what I did was I just went along, you can tell I've been scratching fluff with it for the snow. So what I did was I just went along the side like this with it, and I scratched it up. And then you can also use even kind of the side of scissors if you're careful, especially on these corners. You need something a little bit more to cut into it to make it look a little bit like a book. All right, and so I will go over how to make the book cover on my blog in a little bit more detail. Hello, crafty friends. This is Tammy coming at you from my parents' house, and I am still out of town. I'm sitting here between my dad's dog and his cat Cinder, and with all the things that are going on right now in the family, I just thought it would be easier for me to do a voiceover with the stills I took when I was making the project to try and explain to you how I made the book out of a vignette tray. So let's go ahead and give that a try right now. All right, you begin with a small vignette tray. You're going to cut some thin strips of chipboard, and as you can see, I adhered them along the bottom 3 sides and top 3 sides of the vignette tray. I left the other side blank, and I'll show you what I did with that right now. So I wanted that side to be the binding, and so I built it up with several layers of chipboard, but I made them smaller as I put them on top, so it would be kind of rounded like book covers usually look along on the binding side. Now to the binding, I wanted to add some detail, and so I added some little strips of chipboard on the top of the binding. I'll show you those in a minute. And then I added one more strip along what would be the right side of the binding, or on the left side of the front cover of the book. You can see it if you look there. And then I covered the whole thing with a piece of Distress Craft heavy stock. Now, before I adhered the heavy stock over the binding, I want you to see that I put 4 little pieces, little strips of the chipboard, 2 at the bottom and 2 at the top, evenly spaced apart, just to add a little detail like you see on older books. And then I went ahead and adhered that craft stock all the way around the binding, so it was slightly rounded, but it folds under, and I adhered it to the inside of the tray. I really wanted the details to show, and so I used the Tim Holtz metal rub-on tool. You could also use a bone folder, whatever you have on hand, and I went on each side of those little pieces of chipboard so that they would stand out. And I also went along the one that I put on the front of the book to make it kind of look more like a binding, and that kind of made those details stand out. I wanted the edges of the vignette tray to look like pages of a book and not to look like just wood, flat wood. So I used this old scratcher tool from Tim Holtz, and I ran it along the side and the top and the bottom many times to make a bunch of scratches so that it would look like the pages of a book. At this point, what you need to do is cover the entire project with a layer of Distress Collage Medium. Make sure that you get the entire thing covered. We're going to be using Distress Crayon later on. And then once that is dry, you want to cover the front with another thin layer of Distress Collage Medium, and you want to adhere one of the backdrops papers that looks like a book binding. I chose the red one. You're going to put that on there and then save the extra. Now, when you trim it, you need to be sure that you trim it so that you have enough left over so that it will wrap around the edge of the the tray, and it also will cover those little strips of chipboard. And then I went ahead and pressed it down with that the rub-on tool so that it would really adhere to the edges of the chipboard. Once you have it wrapped around those little pieces of the chipboard, you want to trim off any excess so that it looks like it's the edge of the book cover. Now you need to do this to the top and the bottom, and the paper that you use to cover the bottom edge of the tray is the excess that you cut off when you did the front cover. The book binding on this was made with a piece of cracked leather cardstock, and then I colored it with aged mahogany distress ink. I then went ahead and adhered it, and I sealed it also with Distress Collage Medium to make sure that it all kind of had the same shiny, matte finish. Then if you look, you can see how I cut it long enough so that if you look at the bottom corner edge, that it kind of curls under like a real book cover does. And so you can just kind of manipulate that with the Distress Collage Medium on there. Makes it a little softer and a little more pliable. All right, then the next thing that I did was I covered up all my mistakes with Distress crayons in walnut stain. All you have to do is rub it on there and then get a little bit wet, and you can see how it just kind of goes into all the little crevices to kind of make it look like book pages, and it also makes it look like it's an old book. One last thing I wanted to do was to highlight those details I had put on the binding of the book, and so I used a little bit of tarnished brass distress paint, and I painted those on there, and then I aged them also with a little bit of walnut stained distress crayon, and I was pretty much done. As I said earlier, I didn't put a title on this because I wanted the vignette to speak for itself, but this is the point where you would probably either stencil something, stamp something, or if you wanted to use die cut letters, you would put those on there as well. A little bit more detail, but let's talk about this as a vignette piece, which to me, vignettes are storytelling pieces. They are a piece that is going to tell a story, and I want to use the items to tell my story. So this is A Christmas Carol. Now I could have put that on here, and maybe in the future I will put it on there, but I really wanted the vignette to tell the story rather than a title on here. Okay, so let's start off with the fact that if you watched the movie The Man Who Invented Christmas, which is the story of Charles Dickens, who wrote A Christmas Carol, he had specified that he wanted a gold and red cover on his book. So that's why I have a gold and red cover. All right, and then our vignette begins here. And if you know anything about the story of A Christmas Carol, you will know that it begins with the word dead. Marley was dead. And it goes on to tell the story of how Ebenezer Scrooge's partner, Marley, had been dead some 7 years. and he was dead as a doornail. So there's a doornail holding in the number 7. And then after Scrooge gets home from work, he goes up to his door and he sees Marley's face with his jaw tied up in the door knocker. And so this is to represent the door knocker with Marley's face as a ghost peeking through. And then once he goes up to his bedchambers and he's having his dinner, he hears some noise and he's visited by the ghost of his dead partner Marley, who is wrapped in chains and locks. And he says he's carrying around these burdens from his selfish, stingy life. And that Ebenezer's were as long as his 7 years ago, and that he's just continued to build on them. And so he's coming to warn Ebenezer, and he's going to do that through 3 spirits. And the first spirit that visits Ebenezer Scrooge is the spirit of Christmas past. And so if you'll look inside the window, I don't know if you can see, these are the windows from the Halloween. But it says, Christmas remembrance, 'tis only a ghost of Christmas past. So that is in the sticker book with the clippings. And so I use the clippings for that. You'll see in there, I have some of the new, aren't those beautiful, those new sparkly snowflakes? I absolutely love them. They may be one of my favorite things. The icicles that are part of this release, the trees. And then in the back is one of the layers, and it is a scene is an outside scene. And I chose that for the Ghost of Christmas Past because generally the ghosts take Ebenezer Scrooge outside where he sees his school friends, and it seems like they're outside a lot in the bright sunlight as he's remembering things. So that's why I wanted it bright and sparkly and light, because that is the Ghost of Christmas Past. Also, the Ghost of Christmas Past tends to be small, so I used one of the dolls, and then I added the little adornment crown, because many times they have a crown, sometimes of twigs or something like that, and then oftentimes they'll have just a little bit of holly or something, just a little bit Christmassy on there. So I added that, and then just some flowers, because they were usually out in nature where there were trees and different things. All right, so on top I have a cold, snowy outdoor tree that kind of goes with the trees that are in here. And on both this tree and the trees in the window, I added some of the new snowfall grit paste with the sparklies in it. Also, this tree is decorated with not just baubles, but also with the bubbles from the Halloween release. I had to mix a lot of the Halloween release with this to be able to tell this story. In fact, the word dead, the skull, and these locks are also from the Halloween release. I forgot to talk about that. Okay, on top, there are a couple of meaningful things. So we have this card that says, A Merry Christmas to You, because Scrooge worked for one of the memories that is brought back. He worked for Fezziwig, who is one of his favorite employers, and he was very jovial and had a Christmas party and different things like that. And so I added that in honor of Fezziwig. I added the heart in honor of his fiance that he was going to marry that didn't work out, and that's also a part of his memories. And then I added December 24th because the spirits all visit him on Christmas Eve, the 24th of December, and that is also the night that Marley died, some 7 years before. Also, when they are outside, they're at a school, so I added some bricks on this side. On this side of the vignette box, it is wood like a door, but on this side, I added some bricks. This is just the 3D brick embossing folder, and I just used different colors of paint and different colors of paper underneath them both. So this is supposed to be read like a school. This would be more brownstone, like a house in the city. And so as we're making our transition from Christmas past into Christmas present, I had a snowman, because that kind of is also part of a transition, but also in a lot of the scenes. You would see snowmen and snowballs being thrown by the children, as well as books from school that the school kids, and also Ebenezer was had books at school as well. So I added some of the books from the Halloween release with those wonderful book covers that were in the ephemera pack. One of my favorites. All right, now we move around to this vignette box, and this one has another one of the Halloween window frames on it. I told you I would be using them for Christmas. I love these. Inside are those drippy candles and candlesticks, also part of the Halloween release, but look how beautifully they work with Christmas. I added some of the garland glitter on both the candlesticks. I painted the candles white with picket fence, and then I sprayed them with some Distress Resist spray and spritzed them with the Rock Candy Distress Glitter. A lot of Rock Candy Distress Glitter has been sprayed all over this. For the tree, and let me turn on this light. I forgot to turn on the lights for you for the last one. Let me go back and get that at the end. Well, I'll do it right now. Sorry, I forgot to turn on the lights. There we go. So that's why I see she's sparkly and bright and happy, and you can actually see the snowflakes much better that way too. Okay, so back over here, this is our festive Christmas present, and I wanted it lots of green and red because the Spirit of Christmas present, when he comes out, he has just all of the garland and the velvety green robe and all of that, and so I wanted it to feel that way. Also, this could be Nephew Fred's house, where he's invited Ebenezer to come visit him, and his Scrooge refuses to go visit his nephew Fred, but during Christmas present we are taken to see him. Now I used another one of those little new snowflakes as the star on our little tree, and I put the tree in one of the Halloween urns, and all of this has been sprayed with distress spray, and then I added some more of the garland glitter. So yes, I got out that garland glitter and I used it all over in this one. Also, if you look at this is one of the new Sizzix dies, and I sprayed it with just Distress Resist spray on the paper first. So this is some of the Tim Holtz, it's the craft stock, the flat craft stock that is out. And so I took two different kinds of greens, sprayed it with distress spray, sprayed it with a little bit of the rock candy glitter, and then more of the garland glitter. And so I have it in a glitter duster, and I went ahead and just, sprayed over it so that it had a little bit of sparkle. The tree has a little bit of sparkle. I have distress rock candy glitter on the candles, and then more of the garland glitter is on the urn that I painted with tarnished brass, and on the candle stands that I sprayed with resist spray, and then more glitter. There is more of the greenery in the bottom, and more of the red. This is crimson is the alcohol ink color that I used for those baubles in the bottom. So that's pretty much it. It just says in there, a Merry Christmas to all, and then underneath it the word humbug. Those were both from the clippings stickers, and a little bit of the velvet trim to finish it off. As we make our transition way from Christmas present into Christmas future, there is a little crutch, and it just basically speaks for itself. But if you don't know the story, in the Spirit of Christmas present takes Ebenezer Scrooge to his employee's home. His employee is very, very poor. He has many children, but his youngest child is Tiny Tim, and Tiny Tim is ill and uses a crutch to get around. And just before they leave, Ebenezer Scrooge asks the Spirit of Christmas future if the boy will live. And he says, if these shadows don't change, I see a crutch without an owner in the future. So here's a crutch without an owner if these things don't change. All right. Last but not least, here is the Spirit of Christmas future, and it is smaller, And even though the spirit is always very tall in the whole thing, I made it smaller, and it does not light up because it is darker. And again, I used the icicle from this release. These clippings say, "The Christmas spirit, carry it within your heart." This is an old branch that I have in the back and then in the top here, just to kind of make it look like an old cemetery. And then I use some of the new remnant rubs, and I cut apart just a couple of the words to put the name Ebenezer Scrooge on the tombstone. And I didn't have a Z, so I just covered it with some of the grit paste, the regular opaque grit paste, so you couldn't see through it and see that I didn't have a Z on there. But it says Ebenezer Scrooge. This is just one of the arched gates. And look at that snowfall distress grit paste. Isn't that amazing how icy it looks? I absolutely love it. So wonderful. Now, one last thing is that Ebenezer Scrooge says that he, Marley warns him that if he doesn't change his ways, that he has, all of these things that he'll be dragging around with him. And so the last thing that I added was, if you look in the corner, you can see one of the keys that comes with the locks from the Halloween release. And if you look down in there, you can see that I put a key in the very corner down there, because Ebenezer Scrooge realizes what a miser he has been and how hateful he's been toward his fellow mankind, and he promises to change his ways. And so I left the key there for him, just to finish the story out. So there is, I think, one of my favorite Christmas vignettes that I've ever made, based on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And I hope you like it too. If you'd like to see some still photos and also the tutorial for making the book base, please head over to my blog at playswellwithpaper.blogspot.com, and hopefully you can see whatever you need to see there. If not, if you still have questions, please contact me through my blog, and I will do my best to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much for sticking with me with this really long one, but it needed to be because, again, it's my favorite.